Hey guys, welcome back. Ricky here. We are finally here. It is December, and as you guys always know, or you guys may know, and this is the second year I've done this where I talk about all of the best gear I've used in the year. Obviously, in this year is 2018, and so I want to start the video series off with knife blocks or knife storage. I have 5 different solutions here, and they all are very different. They are similar in some ways, but they're all very different and for very different users. The first is the knife block. The knife block is the prized possession in their kitchen. You go in there and you see a very nice display of knives, and sometimes they're great knives, sometimes they're not. But the knife block is something that everybody has. This particular unit is by Enzo. It's a very nice unit. Of all the knife blocks I've tested, I find that this one is definitely the most handsome. It has straighter edges and the corners aren't very rounded, which I don't really like. When you see knife blocks with very round corners, they look a little too old, or just, yeah, they don't look clean. This one also has a very nice 4-slot feature for your large knives. Most knife blocks that I've seen will have 2 slots that will fit a chef knife and 2 knife slots that will fit a smaller santoku. These 4 slots right here will actually fit full-size chef knives, which is really nice. And it's a dark acacia wood, very handsome, very simplistic, but also very functional. But we're not going to spend a lot of time on this because you guys know what a knife block is. All right, this one here is the Wüsthof Master Block. It's a very nice block. In my very humble opinion, it's the best looking knife block for, this sort of a style where you want something on your counter space. It's very clean, very contemporary. In terms of its overall design, I think it's a very clean look. It has these slots here that can sometimes go out of alignment. So they have these pegs that run through to hold these slots together. And every once in a while, you'll notice that the spacing between each slot is not very even. In that case, you simply can, shift it around with your fingers. And if they're a little tight, you can use a butter knife. I wouldn't recommend using any of your chef knives, but grab a butter knife and just, jam it in there, wedge it, move things around, and that should solve the problem. Now there is also a slot for your honing rod, but if you were to put 12 full-size knives in here, your honing rod won't fit there. So you have to make a choice: either take 1 knife out and or 2 knives out and put a honing rod in there, or have some smaller knives in that same, kind of quadrant area. It also has a felt bottom, which is nice for very smooth tables, and you can shift it around or spin it around. Wüsthof advertises this that you can fit 12 full-size knives on it. However, I will warn you, when you have 12 knives in this block, the handles will touch and they can get a little tight. Now for me, the biggest drawback to using a knife block set that sits on top of the countertop, or for homes that have small children. My home, I've got a 3.5-year-old and 1.5-year-old twins. They're climbing everywhere, and so for us, we don't feel comfortable leaving knives, kind of exposed on the countertops. For homes with young kids, I don't recommend these 2 solutions. I think the next solutions will work a little bit better for you. Let me start with the Cork Solution. Now the Cork Solution is what I've used in my previous home for many years, and I absolutely love it. It's a solution that I still would be using if it wasn't for this solution over here. So imagine this is your knife drawer and you have your cork. And so I would take these and line them at the end of my knife drawer, and I simply would place a knife in there, and as I added more knives, I would simply remove a piece of cork if needed. And it worked great. For a person who had a lot of knives, this solution was fantastic. There's very little mess, and the cork also absorbs some water, so if you left your knives a little bit damp, it wouldn't hurt the knives at all. And so this solution was fantastic. It was a solution that I think anyone should explore if you want something cheap and just kind of fun and very customizable. You can fit any knives or any number of knives into a solution like this. The only limitation you have is the width of your knife drawer, and so the wider the knife drawer, the more you can fit, the more knives you can fit, and you simply remove each piece of cork as needed. Okay, so this here is a knife slot. They call this a knife slot, or a knife drawer in-drawer slot block. It's a very simple unit. It's basically a block that has a bunch of slots in it. The really neat thing is that you have 2 tiers of slot sizes. You have your large knives, which fit back here, and then your smaller knives, which fit over here. Now I have a little cheese knife that sits right here on top, and it's great. It actually fits really nicely. And I also have a shucking knife. I love eating raw oysters, so if anyone know of some good raw oyster areas in the Sacramento area, let me know. And then I have my knives, my larger chef knives, which sits really nicely this way. On this particular unit, you can fit 7 full-size chef's knives and then 8 smaller knives. And so that's a pretty large number of knives. The really nice thing about this unit here is that some of us may have 4 or 5 chef's knives versus people who buy a knife block where you only have 1 chef knife, 1 Santoku, and they stick with that knife set for many years. For people like me, and we're always circulating through knives, and we may have 7 or 8 chef knives, but only 1 or 2 paring knives, this solution here is very flexible and it allows you to have as many large knives as you really want. And it's also very compact. All your knives sit right here and they go into a drawer and they're nice and safe. And the reason why I'm using this over the Cork is for one very specific reason. The new home that we have that we're currently living in, there's not a lot of counter space and there's not a lot of drawer space. And so what we were finding was that the knife drawer was sharing real estate with utensils. And even though the Cork was holding the knives together really nicely, the utensils were bouncing into the knife handles and the blades. And so I had to figure out a way to minimize that. And so this unit here will take care of that problem. And so right now we do have this in the knife drawer and there are utensils on the side of it, but they're not banging onto the knives. And so they can share real estate and everyone can be happy. And obviously all of our doors and drawers are child-proof. And so they all have locks on them. So even though the kids can technically reach into the drawer, it only opens about 2 or 3 inches wide, and then you have to unlock it manually. None of our kids have been able to figure that out yet. So as of now, even though this is more accessible in terms of height and reach than the knife blocks would be, they're actually technically safer in a home. All right. The next option we have is my option that I use here in the studio. And so I have lots of knives, as you guys may know, and I had to find a way to make my knives more accessible. And so what was happening was a lot of my knives were kind of being restored into the original boxes, and every time I test them or sharpen them, I pull them out. And over time, the boxes would get wet, they kind of would wear down, I would get lazy, and sometimes I would mix and match boxes to knives. Not a good solution. And so I had to figure out a way to make my knives just more accessible and more visible. I found these on Cutlery More's website, and they turned out to be the best quality that I have tested so far. They're made of black walnut. So they're obviously very pretty, but the best thing is they're extremely strong. The magnets on these blocks are by far the strongest I've ever tested. And so you can hear for yourself. Okay. So very hard to pull straight out of the block or the slot. The best way to move a knife off is to twist the blade away from the block, and you pull away, spine in, blade out, spine out. Okay, so practice. But if you do it this way, even though it's very strong, it's very easy to pull off the wall. But if you were to try to pull this thing directly, away from it, it's very, very hard. Yeah. So, and so for me, this was the best solution for us to have. And so I have my German knives and my Japanese knives all sitting on the same thing. And the wider your knives, the more these magnets will pull on the knife, which is really good. This here is not a very tall knife, but it's still very strong. So in my latest kind of garage makeover, studio garage makeover, I have a strip of reclaimed wood from a previous project, and I actually lined 3 20-inch pieces side by side, which is able to fit 18 knives, which is fantastic because I can pull 18 knives off the shelf and make room for whetstones and other things that I have going in and out. There are many magnetic holders out there. There are steel ones, there are other ones that have leather on them, which I don't recommend because if you accidentally cut into the leather, it's going to show very much. The steel ones are okay, but they can leave scratches on the sides and the profiles of your knife. So these solutions here are what I have used and what I really currently use. The knife blocks are fine, there's nothing wrong with them. I just don't find them to be the very safest option for homes with small kids, and they're just kind of boring, and they're knife blocks, they're fine. If you guys want an upgrade to your standard knife block, the Wüsthof Master Block, very nice, very clean, very contemporary. At $200, it can be a little bit pricey and really not practical for people having a $300 knife set. I don't recommend you buying a knife block that costs almost as much as your knife set. If you have knives that you're going to pick up over time, and you're having, you know, 6 or 7 or 8 full-size knives, and you do want to have a way to showcase them, the Master Block is very nice. But if you're like me and you have small kids in your home and you want to have a solution that is very sleek, very easy to hide, and you can lock your knife drawers, the slot in-drawer units are definitely the way to go. This unit here can hold 7 large knives and 8 smaller knives. So definitely more than enough space for anybody, even a knife collector as myself. And if you want something that is even more flexible and don't really plan to share your knife drawer real estate with anything other than knives, these are great. Buy a bunch of cork sheets and just cut them up by 2x4, put them at the very end, and you can just simply pull each slot off as you fit more knives. And if you're looking for a magnetic wall mount solution, these made by Wüsthof are the best that I've tested. They come in 2 sizes. I believe there's a 20-inch version and a 16-inch version. They use the same magnets and the same black walnut, so very high quality. I will leave a link in the video description to all these items here, and if you guys follow that link, you guys may even see a sneak peek of my best picks for knives and whetstones for 2018. And obviously want to hear from you guys. What is it that you guys use for your kitchen knives at home? Or if you guys have any suggestions for products for me to test that falls into this category, let me know in the comments as well, and maybe I'll do a follow-up video of some of your suggestions versus what I have here. That might be kind of cool. Alright guys, well that'll be it for this video. Thank you for being here, and I'll catch you in the next one. Boop, boop. Ah! Oh snap! Ah! Oh. Oh, jeez. Oh my goodness. It's weapons.